My name is Booker, and thank you so much for sticking around and seeing what's possible when we choose to live a life in the bliss of blamelessness. As we hold the Dharma, embodied wisdom, and social justice as a viewpoint from which we know these guidelines for an ethical life. As you've experienced over these first 3 weeks, the precepts really rely on each other and lift each other up and really support each other. By living these practices in our everyday lives, we begin to see their relationship and intersectionality to each other. One can know that the practice of caring for their sexuality and that of others is only possible when we've undertaken the precept to protect life, to be generous, and to care for our speech. And though we're coming to the end of this series together, I'm hoping that this is just the beginning for many of you to continue to explore living and knowing your practice off the cushion by incorporating the precepts into every thought, word, and action as you engage with the world around you. So I thought I'd begin with a recap, just to remind us of where we've been and to set us up for where we're going next. In our first session together, I spoke of how the classic language of abstaining from always felt a little harsh to me. And so we've been working with the following version of the precepts that remind me that I'm engaging in these practices to support, to care, and to protect myself and others. Because we share an interdependence that reminds me that we belong to each other. So knowing how deeply our lives are intertwined, I undertake the precept to protect life, to be generous, to care for the sexuality of myself and others, to be mindful of my speech, and to care for the intoxicants that might cloud my heart and mind. And that's where we will pick up today, by looking at the delight of living a life free of intoxicants. At the beginning of this program, I told you a bit about myself. And now that we've gotten to know each other a little bit better, you probably surmise that I am a queer, Black, American woman who's chosen to live a life that is fueled by an ethic of love, faith, equity, and justice. And when that is your social location and the Dharma, your practice, one is very aware of our world and all that stands against all that I stand for. My dear friend and colleague Sylvia Borstein refers to the fifth precept as the practice precept that completes the first. And that first, again, being this commitment to protect all living beings, no matter what. And so we pay attention and we bring these precepts into every aspect of our lives as a roadmap to keep our integrity and our dignity in check. When most of us think of intoxicants, we typically think of things like drugs and alcohol, things that interfere with our ability to access clear knowing, and that can lead to the harming of others. And many folks choose sobriety to support this commitment to not harming others and not harming themselves along the way. And I want to bring our attention to other intoxicants that can also cloud our hearts and minds and interrupt or deny our ability to be in connection. In the climate we are living in today, these intoxicants can also look like our sensationalized news media, our social media, our handheld devices, and what a lot of us choose for entertainment can also confuse the heart and mind. And when we believe what we are told and not seeing for ourselves, which was a very clear instruction of the Buddha when he said, ehipassiko, to go and see for yourself. For me, every intoxicant that I can think of that puts up this barrier to my truth can be dropped into a bucket of one of the three poisons of greed, hatred, or delusion. Buddhadasa pithily refers to them as a pulling in, a pushing away, or running around in circles. When ignorance is present and I begin to believe that the social conditioning around me that is rooted in the oppression of others is true, I know that my heart and mind has been colonized by these three poisons. When I forget my true nature, I'm not able to see the humanity of others, and I begin to meet anger with anger and fear with fear. When we're not paying attention, these poisons can lead us to unhappiness and suffering. And just on the other side is this great possibility of liberation and freedom. And we can feel this in our bodies through Hiri and Ottappa, these two bright qualities that protect the world. So Hiri is more of an internal gauge. It's that feeling we get in the pit of our stomachs or that tingling we get in our armpits. It's our conscious coming online when we've done or said something that is not in alignment with our values. Hiri allows us to keep our self-respect and our integrity by gently reminding us of who we are. She invites us into our courage and back into our humanity. And Ottappa is more external and relational. It's that sweet quality that allows us to move through the world with a sense of ease and lightness, dignity and nobility, knowing that we have done nothing that is blameworthy. This ally in protecting the world is driven by being connected to something bigger than ourselves. It supports us in remembering that we are accountable to each other through our words, deeds, and actions. It reminds me that we are social beings and that we belong to each other. And this is easy to be reflected back to us when we surround ourselves with wise friends who've also committed to being on this path. Kalyana Mita are spiritual friends who are good and admirable and noble. We turn towards these virtuous friendships for perspective when we're having a hard time seeing things right-sized. We turn towards these virtuous friends for perspective when we're having a hard time seeing things right-sized. I was under a writing deadline the other day, and I turned to one of my dear Kalyana Mita for advice and support. And I told her that I had just been cleaning my house all day, that I hadn't been doing any writing at all. And she said, "Oh, you've been sweeping the temple." And then she went on to say that there is nothing cleaner than the home of a writer who is under a deadline. And there is something, both literally and metaphorically, that I really appreciated about that advice that she offered. Removing the clutter sets up the conditions for a heart, mind, and body to move through the world with ease. And getting curious about the precepts in our everyday lived lives is like sweeping our temple. It clears out the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, creating the space that is needed to invite in tenderness, care, and generosity. It is the foundation, the starting point of our practice. In our first session together, I spoke of my first meeting and subsequent practice time in Uganda with Bhante Buddharakkhita. More than anything, I was really moved by his lightness, how free he seemed to be as he moved through the world, how nothing seemed to stick to him, nothing really weighed him down. So when he offered this advice to me of having no separation between my practice and my life, I knew there was a lot to be known about taking what I learned on the cushion in my formal meditation practice and moving it into every aspect of my life. And just like the precepts that lean on and support each other, we begin to lean on and get the support of our Kalyana Mita, these spiritual friends, of Hiri and Ottappa, these bright qualities that protect the world. We sweep our temples and we listen and begin to trust the felt sense of these bodies that contract and expand. We know how to do this. This is our birthright, to be safe and to be cared for. Dear ones, I hope that you've had fun over these last 4 weeks together, exploring, playing, experimenting, getting curious with these 5 precepts through the lens of Dharma, embodied wisdom, and social justice. I hope that there is more weight and width and depth to how you're holding these practices and how you are learning to care for them. It's been a joy to share these practices with you all, and I'm looking forward to hearing how this offering has landed for you. Thank you so much for your kind attention.